It's that time of year again, coming into sales season. Everyone is poised to get their next resin printer. Though when we look at the resin releases of 2025, what have we had? 3 new printers, an upgrade, and a re-release of 2 printers that came out last year. So while some of this is going to be a recap of what we've seen before, I promise to make this a much shorter version, just an overview buying guide of what is available right now so you can decide what to pick up quickly, or at least narrow it down to a couple of options that you can watch my full review on to finalise your decision. And why should you trust my opinion? Well, I've actually tested and compared all the machines I'm talking about. I'm not an AI video generated to get you to spend the most money. My goal is to help you find the best printer for you. It's what my programming ensures. Hi, I'm Ross, and this is Fohammer Videos. So right, I'm not going to beat around the bush. If you're new to resin printers, I've got a whole playlist for beginners that walks you through what a resin printer is, the process of using one, post-processing, and even some useful tips, tricks, and accessories you'll want. Please check out those videos before or after this. But if you do get stuck or want some more info, drop your questions in the comments and I'll respond to every single one that I can. Now, I did have a concern that all the key brands are poised to drop new resin printers at the end of 2025, right after I make this video, but I've been assured by all the key players there's nothing on the cards in the immediate future. If you're watching this in early to mid 26, check out my channel page to see what machines have been released since. For now, let's start small. And speaking of small, this is where the first marketing trick comes into play. We've talked for so long about higher resolution screens and sharper details, and we measure resolution in pixel size. But there's a bit more to it than that, because printers' light sources also play a part. So when we look at small printers with their 18 micron displays and assume they're the highest resolution printers on the market, when it comes to the practical detail you're going to get out of them, it's just not the case. And here's the trump card. We haven't made leaps in terms of print quality on printers in nearly 2 years now. I can and do tell people what the sharpest displays are, but truthfully, we've gone well beyond the limits of what most resins themselves can actually render. For statues, busts, miniatures, and even smaller scale prints, such as scale models, cars, dollhouses, gunpla, railways, dental sculpts, and more, I doubt a single printer in this video is capable of producing results you'd be happier with than the next, especially for those of us who want to reduce layer lines and voxelization because we apply image blur and anti-aliasing anyway. The point is, it's more often the practical use benefits of a resin printer that sets one apart from the other. And when it comes to resolution, I'm starting to slowly come around to the idea that the sharpness of a machine is close enough to negligible. It is more of a psychological barrier than one that practically matters. And yeah, it bothers me too, because I've spent over 3 years looking for the next best thing. So I very much still sneer at printers which produce softer results, when in reality they still fall within the acceptable camp for all of the print types I just mentioned. So let's get into it proper. If you want absolute budget and basic, my preference would be the Anycubic Mono 4. There's literally nothing special here, but it's fine and it does the job from a more reliable brand than the typical ones you would see on AliExpress that nobody's really ever heard of. And I'd probably pick it over a Mars 5 simply because the Mars 5 has a stupid 2-tier build plate with auto leveling that isn't auto leveling. There's no such thing as auto leveling, except if you buy a Heygears, but we'll come to that later. And honestly, auto leveling really doesn't matter that much anyway. The Mono 4 doesn't have auto leveling, but what I like about it is it doesn't even have a promise that it does. But yeah, when it comes to the budget end, my personal call would be the Mono over the Mars, but in terms of actual print result, again, there's very little in it. But if it does matter, the Mono 4 also has a marginally larger build area, but it's a couple of millimeters. You're unlikely to notice it. But next up is the Mono 4 Ultra and the Mars 5 Pro. These are head-to-head again. And this really depends on what you want from a printer. On the Mono 4 Ultra, we once again have that slightly larger build volume, and this one also has pressure sensing in the plate which can do some handy stuff, like resin level detection before starting a print, and even speed up prints by dynamically detecting layer peeling. Which reminds me, I actually made a whole video about that and forgot to make it public, so I really should do that now. Anyway, on the other side, the Elegoo Mars 5 has got a tilting vat, but it's still got that daft build plate. I've got to say though, the tilting vat is handy and it does work. The Mono 4 though is a bit more legacy. It's a tried and tested simple mechanism, where the Mars is a bit more modern high tech. But seriously, when deciding between these, this is what I'd do. Watch the full reviews, look at the prices. Then if you still can't decide, flip a coin. Don't let that decide for you, but it'll tell you what your gut feeling was. Go with your gut. And that advice could be true for so many comparisons here. It's about getting what's right for you. Neither printer is significantly better than the other in any wildly meaningful way. Neither is better quality or from a significantly better brand than the other. They can both be great, they can both be terrible. Welcome to mid-tier 3D printers. Now I need to say, as I have before, if you're looking at smaller printers, personally I think the only reason I can really see that these hold much value is if you have a constraint, so budget or available space in your home. Now remember, you'll also probably want a wash and cure station as well as a messy work area, ideally with a silicon mat down, and that reminds me, I really should do a best resin printer accessories video anyway. But yeah, when it comes to small printers, don't get wowed by the pixel size on these machines compared to larger 10-inch printers that are generally far more versatile and in most cases actually a bit sharper. 90% of users won't see a difference, but the difference is there because of the upgraded light sources. So that being said, if you want a small printer and you still want the best there is, I personally still feel that that crown, and it's a cheap resin crown, goes to the Frozen Mini 8KS. Again, there's nothing smart here. There's not even pressure sensing, there's no Wi-Fi. It's just a bog standard and basic 3D printer, but something that time has shown to be a generally more reliable machine, which is marginally sharper than its competitors. And it's weird being a reviewer because all I can really show when I release a video is a printer's features against price. With how fast this market's moved, we've had new machines one-upping each other every few months. But now, in the last year, we've slowed down. We can have some more respect for the brands that make machines that are in it for the long run. Only now am I getting people in my comments telling me they want to replace their original Mini 4K and they're asking what I recommend. Honestly, I recommend either repairing their Mini 4K, getting another one, or stepping up to a larger printer. And that brings us on to the basic Saturn IV versus the M7. And once again, I'm in the Anycubic camp here. I think the M7 is great. This has pressure sensing, dynamic lift height, and it talks about auto leveling, but ignore it. There's springs behind the screen. You still need to level your printer. It's basic, but it's solid. If you want an entry into 10-inch printing, I would start here. Now the Saturn IV is fine, but again, that daft build plate puts me off in comparison. Just, look, can I be straight with you? I hope when watching this, everyone understands I'm not shitting on certain machines just because I prefer different ones. We really are splitting hairs in differences at this end of the scale. The fun stuff will come shortly. But having tested them all, what I'm saying here is no more than if somebody walked up to me and said, here's a choice of two printers, they're both free, or in your case, they're both pretty much equal price. You can have either, but you can only pick one. In this case, all I'm saying is I'd pick the M7. Now, as we move up from here, we also have to consider the Sonic Mighty Revo. Frozen really have let themselves slide in terms of software development, probably because they've been so focused on their FDM printer, the Arco. But again, the Sonic Mighty 14K or 16K, because it's now transitioning to a 16K model, and that's due to the supply of 14K panels running out. It's not an upgrade as some marketing would have you perceive. In my personal opinion, it's a downgrade because it's a smaller build area and these 16K panels don't last as long, but still, Frozen's generally are the more long-term reliable machine. Unfortunately, it's things like their ancillary features, such as the heater and filter, have been so poorly implemented, along with a few mild firmware updates since release, makes me infer that this machine just didn't get the love it deserved. And Frozen really are struggling on the software side of things, and I'll be honest, that's the only place left that I can see for 3D printer advancement beyond a few convenience features. But one of the main benefits of this machine is its easily replaceable LCD, a point I want to come back to shortly, but overall this is solidly built and good from a hardware perspective. Now another entry we need to talk about, because it's new this year, is PioCreate with the Hala X1, and if they wanted to be called PioCreate, they should have put another E on the name. If you're new here, I say it as I see it. Anyway, the Hallett range was previously released by Creality, and this still is Creality, but an offshoot of Creality, now called PioCrea. I don't fully understand what's going there, whether it's a subsidiary or they've separated, but Creality are selling this printer on their website. Anyway, honestly, this isn't a terrible machine, and one that seems a little backwards at first, because unlike every other printer on this list where the bed moves and the vat is stable, here the vat moves and the bed is stable. The idea is that with the bed being rock solid, there's less chance that the build arm will flex, resulting in reduced Z-wobble or Z-wobble. Honestly, I think just a stronger rail on any printer would do the same thing, but I can't prove that theory because no one really makes a rail as solid as this one. Overall, there are some great features on this machine, very convenient, but it's let down by an incredibly daft warmer accessory that heats your resin once before pumping it into the tank, and the software is, well, it's very Creality. If you don't know what that means, you've either never used a Creality printer or you've only used Creality printers. Resin or FDM. The software's terrible. Now, speaking of daft pumps, we come to the M7 Pro. It's not a bad printer because it does everything the M7 does, but its method of heating resin requires it to go through a pump secured to the vat and get pumped back into the tank. That means clearing the resin out is a nightmare. Now, if you're new here, I hate resin pumps with a passion. Not just this one, but also the ones that pump resin into printers too. Resin is already messy, and pumps are just nightmares to clean. Honestly, the better call at this level, I think, is the Saturn IV Ultra, and I prefer this because it's got the same size screen, and whilst yes, it's got that daft build plate, I actually like the tilting resin vat. It's fast, it's simple, and it does the job. But I'll be honest, if you can stretch, the better call is easily the Saturn IV Ultra 16K, from a general usability perspective. This is basically the Saturn IV Ultra again, but it fixes three main problems. One was the lack of handles on the OG's build plate. The second is that it's added a light so that the camera can now actually see what's being printed, both in live monitoring and time lapses. And finally, we have live monitoring thanks to Elegoo's new Matrix app. But mainly, the vat is now heated. So for those of us in colder environments, printing in garages, sheds, basements, attics and the like, this will keep your resin warm, which is often key to successful prints, or at the very least, it'll ensure you have the best environment to get the best quality. Now, when talking about these, I would also recommend checking out Chitu Systems, who make the Hoopat. Again, stupid name. Unfortunately, this doesn't exist for the M7, it does for the M5s, but they do have a version for all the Saturn printers, and now a heated version for the 16K. I've got separate videos on these, and they basically make release film swaps much easier and much faster, and a lot of people are loving them, so check out that video too. Now, when talking about heating, another accessory I'd recommend is an enclosure, not just for heating and keeping the environment warm, but for pumping VOCs out of your printing environment so you aren't breathing them in. Once again, I've got a separate video on that, and I'd recommend checking it out. Okay, now, the printer I missed from last year's summary because it released just after I made the video, and then kind of re-released this year, the GK3. Right, here's the thing. Uniformation really haven't done themselves any favours with this product. I think it's public knowledge that I'm disappointed in the GK3. Many of us who had the GK2 are also disappointed in the GK3. Not because they're bad printers, and I worry that that swayed a lot of people, but because we expected more. The GK2 was so smart and so clever, we just expected uniformation to trump the competition again. What we didn't expect is for them to release two, well, technically three models of the same printer, which I think confused people to the point of, you know what, I don't get this, I'll just go and buy from another brand where the differences are clearer. Something that Creality often does. Less is more, guys. Anyway, but I need to be straight with you. Looking back now, I still probably would rate the GK3 over any of the previously mentioned printers for one reason. It does all the same stuff. It's got a webcam, it's got a monitoring app, it prints the same resolution. The build plate is the best of any consumer printer, and the vat even lets you mount the plate sideways as a drip tray. But the most important element is the easily swappable screen. And honestly, I beg you, if you're watching this video before buying buying any printer, go and watch my review of it, that'll be linked in the description, but then search for that printer name with the word screen replacement afterwards. Go and watch the process for the printer you're about to buy, because if you don't already know, screens on 3D printers are classed as consumables, like batteries in laptops. When the screen dies, you've got two choices: replace the screen or make a large contribution to e-waste and replace the printer. And considering these new 16K screens are dying faster than any that came before them, please buy a printer expecting that screen replacement is a process you'll need to go through at some point. So again, go and watch those screen replacement videos and decide if that's something you ever want to approach. As someone who's spent 10 years as an electronics technician, I don't. And that is exactly why I'd get the GK3 over any of them. But when it comes to deciding between them, there's the normal GK3 with either a T-screw or a ball screw, and the ball screw is designed to last longer. Neither are going to make your prints any better, so honestly, just get the one that's available. The GK3 Pro is more specifically for pro users. It features a different light source, 385nm, which is better for curing transparent materials. Are you going to frequently print transparents? Even then, will the ones you print have internal voids that you want to see in the final model? If not, just get a normal GK3. Now, on to a few interesting outliers in the 10-inch range, including my personal top pick. The Athena 2. I've had a prototype, I haven't yet had a production model. What I loved about this was the idea of built-in resin profiles right on the printer, and the fact that it's incredibly open. And I've got to be honest, this is a brand that I am biased towards. I want them to succeed because of just how great a guy the creator is. Please check out my video with Nico and then come back and tell me with a straight face, this isn't a brand that you want to support. However, I've got to be straight, in my experience with it, the printer is solid and well built, the level of QA testing is fantastic, but having access to such a wide array of settings comes with a wide array of complexity. I feel this one may be specifically suited to those people who've got more of an interest in the technology of resin printing versus the people who don't want to learn any more about how 3D printing works than how 2D printing works. They just want to print a thing. This is an incredibly cool concept, one you should definitely check out even if just to be aware of, but ultimately decide if you want to have that level of control. I think a fair way to sum this machine up would be, they're probably the Prusa of resin printing. And the good side of that is, this could be the last 3D printer you ever need to buy, because they're designing it as a platform that you can add to. So whilst it's expensive, it's a foundation for what comes after, rather than the latest printer that you're going to replace in 18 to 24 months. So, from the Prusa of resin printing to the Bamboo of resin printing, and yes, these are loose analogies, but the closest in that Bamboo camp is the Heygears RS and RS Turbo. Both of these printers I use daily. Heygears came onto the scene pissing everyone off with their arrogance of only we can decide the print profiles, and there was a lot of noise last year regarding the brand being anti-consumer, as though they hadn't existed for almost an entire year before that. But now the dust has settled. Those noises have become more accepting, things like, I just don't want to support a closed-off business model. Yep, totally fine, completely mature. I understand why you wouldn't want to support that, especially with how screwed we've been historically with 2D printers and inks. But personally, as I've said many times, I just want a printer to print things. That's true of FDM and resin. I don't want to muck about with settings. I just want the best results I can get as easy as possible. And more people have come around to this way of thinking, especially those who've had resin printers before. And now that many have realized we can use our own resins in these machines, and their own resins like Past 10 are now in the realm of affordable, people have come to love the workflow as many of us early adopters did. It is more drag drop print. Okay, yep, that's also a level of hyperbole. There are steps you need to learn, like orientation and model repair, but generally, for the average hobbyist, no matter if you have pre-supported models or unsupported models, you can get incredible results easily, and the online support community around this machine is growing. The RS Turbo is basically the RS with a newer screen that allows you to print slightly faster, and in my opinion, if you can still get a normal RS, because Heygears seem to be selling off the older stock cheap, and it may even be gone by the time this video's live, I'd grab the older, cheaper one and then upgrade the screen later when your current one dies and you need to. Again, on these machines, screen swaps are easy. But here's the thing that kind of slaps all that in the face, because we've also now got the new Reflex 2, and from this point on, we are out of the hobbyist realm. I don't think anybody here is going to buy these following printers, but I've used them and I want to summarize them. And I've got to be honest, I didn't realize how much of a contrast these two machines would be until I put them next to each other in this script. So, on the plus side, the Reflex 2 has the largest screen of any amongst the 10-inch range. That's the sole reason I use it over their other units. I'll talk more about screen size in a moment, but the way this has been put together does nothing but embarrass the brand. Where Heygears machines were previously the creme de la creme of premium looks and quality, this is filled with so many cheap or poorly implemented elements that I can't even believe this was put out by the same brand. Let me tell you something I missed from my review because I printed it after. I made some pumpkins for my mate Sean at Element Games London so we could have a Halloween painting competition. I noticed after printing that some of the edges on these pumpkins were flat on the sides, so I raised it with Heygears, suggesting the area in the slicer didn't match that of the screen because it wasn't marked out as red in the slicer. But they advised me that this is due to the tape around the edges, which is hand placed and therefore may not be accurate on every printer. They will update the slicer to inform people this could happen. What? Honestly, in all the time I've had printers, I have never had this happen. It's standard practice to put tape around a screen to stop resin getting in it, but not so much tape that it interferes with the printable area. I've never had that. So this problem could happen to everyone. It's inconsistent on their printers, all because they can't get the bloody tape on straight. I genuinely can't believe they told me this with a straight face, and when I chased them on it, they reiterated it and told me this was normal. Yeah. Okay guys, good luck with that one. Right. In seriousness, it's not all doom and gloom. As I said, this isn't for the hobbyist. The printer wasn't designed for the home user. This was designed specifically for engineering grade materials. So all of the investment, all of the money we spend on it has gone into the light engine, meaning the screen and light source, to ensure it can print resins that have actual strength. And let's be fair, when most of us think of 3D printers, especially if you're watching this channel, we use them for artistic prints, stuff that looks pretty. But when have you ever heard of anyone actually using resin prints for strong components or fixings, the sort of prints we default to FDM printers for? That's a serious question. I don't know because nobody really with that sort of goal comments on my channel. I like models. I show models. I've attracted a channel of people who typically want printers for the same thing. So I guess if you've stumbled across my content and you do want practical prints, sorry Heygears, but I'm still gonna suggest people who are willing to spend 2k with you probably want to rather spend 4k with Formlabs, who have a much larger materials library, unrivaled support, a stronger known history, and a larger user community. Because I've got to say that by far, the Formlabs Form 4 has been the absolute best resin printer I have ever used, just not for the models I print. This is another one where people would decide the material properties they need first and then pick the printer afterwards. But the build quality, the workflow, you can tell a mile off that this is who Heygears are trying to emulate. And when you compare the two, it's like comparing any consumer printer like the Saturn M7 or GK3 to the Creality Hallett range. Yes, they both technically offer the same thing, and whilst the cheaper one emulates many features of the more expensive one, the brand completely misses the point on why so many of these elements exist. Where Formlabs strive to be the best, Heygears often stop at "that'll do," and then awkwardly try to justify why this is not a problem, as though I'm a toddler. And I've got to be honest, I love Formlabs machines. They are glorious, but unfortunately, that 4K screen and the resulting size of the contact points on supports just isn't suitable for the types of intricately detailed models I print. And you know, I did say this in my review, and I offered to send them the printer back because I won't use it, but they still haven't chased me on it. I will make those extra 2 videos I owe them, and I think now one of them needs to be the Reflex 2 versus the Form 4, but I can summarize it here. The Reflex 2 is a budget Form 4 in every meaning of the word budget and cheap. The reason to buy the Reflex 2 is if you want the same material properties, but you desperately are anti-Formlabs. But finally, we've got the big printers. It's the same 3 as last year because for whatever reason, the Elegoo Jupiter 2 that was shown back in, April 25, still hasn't been released. And I've spoken to Elegoo and I've still got no clear idea when it's coming. So that leaves us with the Frozen Mega 8KS, the Jupiter SE, the M7 Max, and the GK3 Ultra, which is 4, not 3 like I just said. Anyway, the Frozen is the reliable one and it's also the largest, but there are no bells or whistles like pressure sensing or Wi-Fi. And the same could be said about the Jupiter, which is a bit smaller but cheaper, which makes it more palatable, definitely the more affordable of the larger range. Now, my personal favourites are the GK3 Ultra and the M7 Max, and this goes back to that flip a coin scenario again, even for me. The GK3 had a rocky start, but it seems their QA is under control now. This has a higher resolution screen, but it's got a matrix LED light source, so you do get more detail, but the detail is softened. And then there's the M7 Max, which has a lower resolution screen, but a sharper COB light source. Less detail, but sharper. Honestly, once you stick anti-aliasing on, there's very little between them, but the GK3 does eke out an edge more detail. Both machines are solid workhorses, so this genuinely comes down to what you prefer in terms of usability. I like that the GK3's got a camera, that build plate, and the ability to flip that plate sideways like a drip tray. But the M7 has great pressure sensing and just churned out print after print from the first time I used it. But when talking about these machines, be aware, if you've never had a large resin printer before, these can become unwieldy immediately. As I've said before, resin printing is messy. It's messier with a big heavy plate and big heavy models on. You'll also need a bigger wash and cure station too. And then consider that every time you fire up a print, you're reducing the life of your LCD. So if you aren't maximizing that usable space on those plates, you have a far less efficient printer over time. Personally, I would avoid larger printers unless you're printing models like statue-sized sculpts quite often, or churning out armies of miniatures. But that's it, there you go, that's this year's summary of mostly last year's printers. As I said, my pick would be the Heygears RS or RS Turbo for the workflow alone, but it's no surprise that due to the company's policies, this isn't a beloved machine like the GK2 once was. Not yet, anyway. Let's see what happens in the next few months. Anyway, if you've got any questions, let me know in the comments, and if you have decided on a printer, maybe you already got one, what did you choose and why? Because I know many viewers rely on the comment section to get people's experiences beyond just my own, so please, share away. What's your time been like with any of these printers mentioned? And don't forget to check out the individual reviews linked below. And if you do pick any of these, I would appreciate you using my affiliate links in the description before making your purchase. That's how I can run the channel. I want to say a massive thanks to our members who are on screen now. Genuinely, you guys keep me going. Please consider joining them for early access, exclusive videos, your name in the credits, and Discord roles. Until next time, yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker. Fohammer out.